obviously you can relax now. The big man is gone. So,
just the copies of the producer. This is what we do. We've got any questions to ask me now? Yes, no. The ORE, as for the part 1 and the part 2, every year there's up to 200 places. Now, what the pandemic has done is we didn't conduct any exams for 2 years. There's a massive, massive waiting list. There was a letter written to the Prime Minister by the IDA UK for 2 or 3. It's difficult. You are in the United Kingdom. You want to practice as a dentist. You're all prepared to do it. There's no exam. Nothing helps you to go and work. So basically, dentists are working as cashiers in supermarkets and other places because there's no available for the exams. There's no exam dates. So that's a massive issue which the Prime Minister has finally answered and it's gone to the state, the Secretary of State for Health, who is actually looking into providing most exams for the year from now onwards. The part A is a clinically approved dental science and clinical human diseases. But, human medical conditions like somebody is anemic, somebody has a leukemia, somebody has, bone necrosis, how you manage that, and the relevance of that in dentistry. And the important thing, the reason I put this one is, I don't know how much low-end ethics you learn here. You get chance to learn the low-end ethics. I'm sure you are being taught the low-end ethics, but at the same time, the low-end ethics is the law of the land where you work, which is the English law or the British law. So this is something which you must put an extra effort. The loss of regulations, how to get rid of sharps, how to get rid of, if you have a sharps injury, how to manage it. Okay. Have you been taught these things? Yes, no? Yes. So that's all basic things. I'm sure it could be slightly different from what you've been taught here. So these are things which you need to know before you go for the exam. When I used to do examination for the ORA, I've seen candidates coming from India and other places, they fail successfully in the low end of this. They use common sense. Common sense is not what we need to learn. We need to know the exact law which has been written down by the UK government and the governing authorities. And the fees and all the fees have gone up. I'm sure these fees will go up further because of the pandemic and the war in Europe. Things are going up. The cost of everything is going up over the roof. Part 2, again, 144 candidates are allowed. We've got 4 parts exam, which is an operative test on mannequin, dental mannequin. OSCEs. Have you come across OSCEs? Do you have OSCEs in your OSCEs? You heard of OSCEs? It's objective structured clinical examination. Just briefly talk about OSCEs later on. So this is something again we have to emphasize. When you do this, before you do this process, you need to have some training courses to help you to do the OSCEs. That's not the part of your training. So OSCEs are not in the examination style. I didn't do it when I was here. So we have to learn. Nothing rocket. Rocket science is easy, simple. It's more objective. So you are tested on your knowledge on a particular case. And then you have a diagnostic treatment planning where there are actors. You have a real life situation. You're walking into a room with the patient, and the patient is an actor. You'll have a chat with them about that. And it's also important you must be able to manage medical emergencies and BLS and any other infections like anaphylaxis or choking. You have something you're doing a crown, and obviously the crown slipped and it went to the patient's throat without a management, so without a rubber band. So what did you do? Something? So choking, likewise, the resuscitation council of United Kingdom has set up the pattern how you're going to manage a medical emergency in a dental practice. So that's something which we need to learn. In part 2, as I mentioned, the practical examination conducted almost 3 times a year. And there is some guarantee from the Department of Health that they will initiate more exams because of the massive waiting list. The fees is quite expensive now. It's almost £3,000 you have to pay. And it's for 4 parts. This one is a dental mannequin exercise, where you are asked to either do a full crown, which could be a post-infused metal, or just, what they look at is the finish. Are you getting a chamfer finish, a shoulder finish? And these examiners will come with loops, at least 1.5 times magnifying loops. It's good to practice yourself investing in loops, which you can use for years. And I've still used my loop for the last 15 years. Probably my eyesight has gone down, but still it works. So it is a worth investment to use loops, because the examiners will definitely use loops. They will say, oh, there's not a chamfer, it's a shoulder. They will stop with the devil. I'm not a restorative person, actually. This will teach you how to do chaps and barrels and shoulders. And you have to do 2 major exercises. It could be a crown prep with a temporary crown. You can have a class 1, class 3, or a class 2 cavity for an amalgam or a composite. Then you have to do root canal treatment on an anterior tooth. You will never get a multi-rooted tooth. It will be a single-rooted tooth. So you have to show the stages. I'm not, again, a restorative person. You need to know the conduction, where you are condensing your cataperca or whatever materials you use. And then diagnosis and treatment planning, which is mostly with the actors. So you need to pass all these things separately. If you fail the medical emergencies, you'll be given 1 more chance. After the second chance, if you fail, stop. You have to take the whole part 2 again. That is the pandemic, as I mentioned. You have 2 major and 1 minor procedure, which the examiner will decide which is major, which is minor. Anything which takes longer, it's almost 2 hours exam. So they will tell you this is the 2 to 3 hours. All the guidelines are available on the GDC website. Okay. So if you Google GDC, everything I'm talking is there as well. OSCEs, you'll have 20 stations. So basically, it's a massive hall, maybe small stations, cubicles, covered cubicles. And within the cubicles, you will be either given a spotters. The questions will be written on the outside with the scenarios and whatever you can expect inside. You may even get a patient inside. So there's a 30-year-old with dental abscess. The patient has got underlying medical conditions. They will say, look, this will be heart disease, on blood thinners, how are you going to manage? So this is what you have to write it down. The examiner will be watching you. Okay? And that's how they do the hospitals. Sometimes quarters, sometimes you'll be asked to do some procedures, like not the dental extraction. Most of the time it's sutures. You said there's a suture you have to do. Then look how you want suture, how you're holding the tissue. These are things you probably have to practice. And sometimes you'll get the x-rays and pictures and things diagnosed. And nobody expects you to give us the right diagnosis. It's important if you can give some differential diagnosis. And you have to practice the way you interpret a radiograph. Probably you're given an OPG radiograph. How are you going to interpret it? Come on, shout. Dr. Vivek has given you an OPG. You have. Asked you. Come on, tell me about this. What are you going to do? I'm asking too many questions. So just to tell you, you have to say what type of X-ray this is. This is OPG radiograph. You must see the date when it was taken on the 28th of March of frame. And what are you seeing? So that sort of a structured approach when you do the exam must be followed. You can say, I can see a large cystic lesion attached to the lower left eight. We don't expect you to say that, because the basic thing has to start from the beginning. And if you're walking into a station where there's a patient, you don't introduce yourself, that will always 1 or 2 marks will go. So you must be introducing. Dr. Jacob, and I'm going to look after you today. What's your name? You have to check the patient's name. You may get the wrong patient. Okay? It's always important. That sort of basic things. Sometimes we miss it. We're very good in knowing high-end stuff. You ask about psychomatic implants, if you ask about vasectomies, and we know it. But when we talk about basic things, introducing yourself, that comes with the communication skills. So there are 4 domains in all the exams in the United Kingdom. This is professionalism, the communication skills, your management qualities, the leadership qualities, and your professional skills. So there are quite a few things they check before in the examination part. So importantly, the downside is if you have been checked on your communication skills and your answer is wrong, you still pass because you talk really well. Okay, but hey, this examiner's choice on that day. The diagnosis, the treatment planning, as I mentioned, most of the time there'll be actors. We'll be given a scenario, as I mentioned, somebody with an abscess or somebody with a root canal, somebody with a filling. So you'll be talking to the patient, introducing yourself, taking the history, taking the medical history, the social history. Both the social history is very, very important. Are you a smoker? What do you do? They work. Somebody working in an industrial area. Are they exposed to rare materials? Like lead, that sort of thing. Also, a common one which is in some of the roofing. Asbestos. That's right. Yeah. So these are the things which you should know. So the investigations are very important. And then, there's a person with a TMJ dysfunction or somebody with the wisdom tooth on the OPG radiograph, you think the nerve is so close to the pieces of the mandibular third molar. So I prefer to have a CBCT before I take the tooth out. So you must write it down. I think we need an extra investigation before I do the treatment. And then you present your treatment to the examiner. So I've seen Mr. Jacob who presented with a massive swelling on the left side of his mouth. That's how you present it. With medical history is this, social history is this, and for the investigations, I would prefer to have some CBCT before our treatment. And if I get the CBCT, if I think the nerve is far away, we take the tooth out. That's your treatment plan done. So when you do this talking, your actors will mark you as well. The 2 people are marking you. The actor will say of the person, look, these actors are real actors. I have seen sometimes it scares us as an examiner. They scream when you want to touch them. They swear at you. So this is something which you are not expecting them to do. Some of these actors overact. Okay, and that's the winning job. They just go around doing exams from London to Scotland. So they're well known. They have a massive database of all these actors. So be sensible. I've seen some of the examiners, so the candidates literally shivering. I feel sorry for them. I said, I want to ask this actor to shut up, but I can't. And as an examiner, shouldn't have done it. But he gives you mark as well. He or she. Okay. Emergency, this is very important. You have to go to this website if you can. It shows you the emergency situation which you need to do. As mentioned earlier, you can fail once, not twice. Okay. Second time, you have to do the whole part two. Normally, the results are given within 20 days. Probably it's delayed now because of lack of staff and people working from home. You're allowed 4 attempts. I don't want anyone to do 4 attempts. Actually, myself, it was 98, 99. It wasn't ORE at that time. It was for the statutory board exam. So I had finished my fellowship. So when you finish my fellowship in observatory, I'm exempt from doing the first part of the statutory board exam. So I can do the second part, which is the practical. That time, you're going to do 2 attempts. You fail the first time, right? You fail the second time, then you're not allowed to write any similar exams at all. So basic thing is you will not be allowed to work as a dentist in the United Kingdom. Sadly, I've seen quite a few very experienced dentists from India. They are working as dental nurses because they failed twice. And again, the examiners are very harsh at that time. It's not like nowadays. Nowadays, it's a bit more open, structured. You can't fail somebody easily. You have to be really bad to be failed. If you are failing, if I'm failing someone, I will stay right down. The reason why I'm failing, because you have the right to appeal. You ask me, why did I fail? I thought I could fail that. So I'm just telling you, you nick the next 2, that's a fail, because you found nothing. When you do this, it's a plastic tube. You're cutting on the plastic tube. It's not like real tubes. You have to store your hand pieces and you have to be very careful. So these are things happen. So I failed my part 2 first time. I'm not ashamed to say that. And it literally, scared. So the next time, if I fail, finished. I have to take my bag and come back to India. At that time, Dr. Vivek and others are flourishing practice in Toronto. I'll be out. So I was literally crying at that time. So what did I failed first time? Anyway, I was supported by this thing. The support you get is unbelievable. And strangers will support you. Some of the dentists took me to the practice. My limitation at that time is I'm working hospital as an oral surgeon. So my hands-on cavity things is limited. So literally every evening, after finishing the work in the hospital, I go to this guy's practice, and I was practicing even rubber band. You not talk about place rubber band. So the only time I played rubber band was for the exam. Never after that, because I don't do dentistry at the moment. So this sort of support is what you need. Nowadays, there are groups which will support you. Even if you open the Facebook, there are Facebook ORA groups. So you find a lot of groups, you have to be part of the group, they will help you, give you questions, they will support you a lot. Then there are associations like the Association of Indian Dentists UK, Indian Dental IDA has a UK branch, they always help you. I'll come to those things later. Yeah, so this is retaking the exam. Everything costs money in the UK. Okay, nothing comes free there. They mentioned the 4 items. Okay, so you can ORA part 1, 4 items, part 2, 4 items. If you don't pass within that 4 items, you shouldn't practice dentistry. Sorry, to say that, what I'm trying to say is this is an exam which actually tests your skill as a dentist. It's not an exam which makes you a bigger dentist or a higher profile. It actually gives you a 5-year period, your qualification as a 5-year dentist. So your competency to make a crown, do some fillings, do some root canal, that's already been tested, and plus your medical emergencies and your treatment planning. The second option is done by the Royal College of Surgeons. This is not as popular as the ORA exam. Okay, and it's slightly way, more or less the exam is more or less the same, but it's still slightly off because the team which runs the exam is completely different from the team which runs the GDC. Sorry, ORA exam, which is mostly done by computed dental institutions like Eastman Dental College Institute or the Edinburgh one or the Sheffield one. Big dental schools take up the challenge. So they have much more facility. There's more easily the staff, the tutors, the examiners are very good. When you come to LDS, it's a different group of examiners. There will be a crossover. Still, I will say at least it's slightly challenging and it's expensive as well. And so you conduct it once in a year. So you don't have exams every 4 times or 3 times in a year. And you have to pay an yearly subscription. Okay, you all have to pay a subscription to the GDC to keep your registration. And it's a yearly registration. It's not like 5 years. I got my 5 years today, yesterday. Registering in France. But in the UK, it's yearly re-registration. So, and also, you need to show the CPD points. You're expected to do 50 hours of verifiable CPD in 5 years, 10 hours of CPD, and then at least 50 hours of non-verifiable CPD. I'll talk about those things later, or maybe I can communicate to you through emails. So, and you have to pay the subscription to the college. This is the Royal College of Surgeons of England, but I'm still an examiner. LSRCS is part 1 and part 2 again. Part 1 is basically again like the basic sciences, and it takes up 200 candidates. Part 2 again, OSCE come into play, and you have to do 3 hours to do the operative test of a mannequin. The unseen cases like the diagnosis of treatment planning with the ORE, where you don't know, you can do anything under there. It depends what they have. So you can see the syllabus on the Royal College of Surgeons website, but it's not very clear. That's why it's not very popular in this exam. Online application, again, the NARIC statement is important, your passport, and that's all those things are known as the same. Some of the degree certificates are in a different language, you have to change it. I'm sure in our place in PMS, you'll be using it English. Diversity monitoring, again, the last year about. I think this is standard questions asked nowadays. Your sexual orientation, your male, female, or any other. Then quite a few questions to be asked about your monitoring quality and diversity. Now, this is a challenge. You pass the OR exam. Can you practice as a dentist? What do you think? ORE or LDS will give you a degree which is compatible to a UK BDS. But for you or anyone to practice dentistry in the high street or independently, you need to have a performance number. The same thing applies to the doctors as well. So once you finish your training or once you finish your final year, then you do the internship, like what you're doing now. The internship gives you the degree certificate. Is that right? Without the internship, you can't practice, can you? It's exactly the same. It's called foundation training. So once you've passed your ORE, you need to be admitted for a foundation training or for vocational training. So you have a VT trainer, a vocational training trainer, a senior dentist, who will actually overlook all the work you do. You are expected to show a portfolio of evidence that you're a generalist. You've done this many fillings, you've done this like open canals, you've done this extractions, you've done dentures, you've done partial dentures, look, all those things. Plus, there are other things like peer review meetings, literature search, audits. You guys have done audits? Department audits? No. So audits, clinical governance is very important. It's not the clinical skills. The clinical governance part of it is massively important. That's where our kids or our children lack. So that's the basic thing. So clinical governance. So that's what you, at the end of your training, you show a portfolio of evidence, which is a folder, which is all the requirements in that portfolio. And the person who looks at it says, yes, it's all mostly done by the deans of each and every area. They will certify, yes, fine. The London dean will say, Dr. So-and-so is written to be a dental practitioner. So you've got the performance number. That performance number helps you to work independently. Now the problem is the local BDS graduates from England and UK will be applying for the vocational training as well. So you are competing with them. The chance of you getting a place is low than a local graduate. The local graduate has to be looked after first. So foundation training or vocational training, what happens? Then we have, this is something which is very popular now. It's called PLV, which is performance list validation by experience. So say, example, you've got 2 years experience here. Then you will be admitted to a PLV trainer. Okay, this particular trainer will train you. So this is actually, because in GDC things, you all have enough experience. So the reason why you didn't do the foundation training is because you are not here at that time. You were coming from a different country. So that's the reason why you didn't do it. So we are offering you PLV scheme. So I'm very actively involved with the PLV now in East of England. Okay? The reason is, again, I feel really, really sad. A lot of dentists utilize it. I spoke to a lady before I came to India. I was running a course of sedation and she graduated her ORE. Now she's doing a PLV training program. So what happens is, what these dentists do, the principal, as it's called, principal is the honors of the practice. Okay? You may have 3 or 4 surgeries, that person is looking after you. You work there, all the patients, national service, right? It's not private, where you patient pays. Patient pays, but national service. So the patient pays, the money is taken by your principal, your boss. Then you have to pay your principal somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 pounds every month for him to look after you. Which way, isn't it? So there's a lot of shots and tells. A lot of Indian corporates, they do it. However, there are other corporates who are very supportive. They are not charging much. But still, you have to pay them. Otherwise, you're not going to practice as a dentist. Without the performance number, you can work, but you have to be in a hospital where you will supervise. What he asked me the question? Yeah. The doctor asked me the question. Can you do it? He said, orthodontist. So you can, but you don't work, you only work in a hospital. Somebody looks after you. You're worked under somebody's supervision. You're not an independent practitioner. So PLVE is the vocational training, which is equivalent to vocational training, the local dentistry. I've known some dentists from India who managed to get the first one. Again, if you're lucky, you may get, depends where you are. The issue, what happens most of the time is, everybody wants to be in a big city. Maybe you will have an uncle or a husband, or somebody works in London or Birmingham or Manchester or big cities. It's very hard to find a job. So rural, out to the countryside. That's where there's a massive shortage of dentists. They will support you, they will help you. And once you get what you need, you can always come back to London or Birmingham or anywhere. Early phases, you definitely have to go through it. So PLV, I'm very actively involved in this opinion. What we're doing is I work closely with Health Education England. Health Education England is the body now who looks after the whole training, whether you're undergraduate training or postgraduate training or specialist training, any training is all under one roof, is Health Education England. These sort of agencies change their name often. It was Family Care Trust, it was changed to something else. Now it's Health Education England, which concept. So what Health Education England is doing is identifying practices, identifying practitioners, and train the trainers, and then support them financially. So if I'm training someone, I'm taking my time to train someone. I do, I love to do that, but not all the people may like it. They say, I want some money for my training, so we are funding them as well. So it's more open. And then these groups like Association of Indian Dentists UK and IDA, if you are a part of it, they normally help each other. So if I'm a trainer, I would say, look, are there any already past graduates I can offer you PLV? They may charge you, but it will be reasonable. So that's the groups which are available to support you. It's not like my time. You don't see that many dentists, no support. Now there's more cohesion. And the thing is, things are changing. The need of manpower to do dentistry in the United Kingdom is more. As I was speaking to Professor Tana or Mr. Tana? Professor Tana. So he was mentioning that the opportunities are going up. Maybe two. So that's PLV. And this is given by the primary test. So it's basically the NHS England is giving you the performance number. Okay? Then who has to take it? As I mentioned, anyone who hasn't done foundation training or same. You haven't done any foundation training at all. That's when you have to do the PLV. The people who are exempt, obviously, unfortunately, none of us qualify for the exempt. Either you have to be EU graduate, which is going to be stopped now within a year. All the EU graduates or EU dentists have to do the exam. In the past, anyone from the European Union, they walk in as a dentist, they can practice. But now, because UK is out of they have transition time before, if you are still there, you can continue with the registration, otherwise, or examination. Then if you work for the Crown, if you work for the Crown means you are a part of the Territorial Army or the Royal Navy or a Royal Air Force like Dr. Captain Vivek, you are exempt. Not from here, you should be part of the Royal Crown Department. Any questions? Am I talking too fast or are you understanding what I'm saying? Yes, no? Yes. Is that useful? Or? Sorry. Do you think it's very complicated? Well, I'm presenting it very complicated. It's not. It's very simple. You need to know it. So the other options, what are the other options if you wanted to have a career in the UK? Is that right enough? Can you see it? All of you? Then you can do the postgraduate studies, specialist posts, and you can do research in academics. So a lot of academics who come to UK, part of a research program. I haven't seen many from Kerala. I've seen probably 3 people. No. There are research positions available. You will be attached to a big university and you'll be part of the research team. Probably because you're non-clinical, you don't need to go through the OR department because you're not seeing patients. You're in a non-clinical pathway, so you don't necessarily need to have it. That's the research people. The specialist posts are like you're a specialist trainee in career, or a specialist trainee in author, or a specialist trainee. It's very hard to get those posts. But if you get the post, you have to pay for the post because it's quite expensive. It's training posts, and that's what will give you an option to practice dentistry. I mentioned these are all time bound, which means there's a period of time you can stay. Research, as long as you are doing the research, you can carry on. You have to further your career. So you basically have to think about all your LBS in some stage. The third programs, I have got lots of inquiries for people who have passed their exams to do postgraduate studies, which could be a diploma or it could be a MSc. And it's hard to get an MClin Dent. The difference, somebody asked me this afternoon, what's the difference between an MSc and an MClin Dent? MSc is an MSc, which is a postgraduate study. Most of the time will be non-clinical. For example, if you do an MSc in implantology, there are courses available. Number of clinical exposures will be limited. You will still see patients, you will still place implants, but it's more of a research-based topic. It's like any MSCs. But when you do an MClin Dent, which is a master in clinical dentistry, instead, for example, implantology, you are exposed to the whole spectrum of implant dentistry. You'll be seeing patients, you are in a clinic, you are enjoying clinics, you're doing a hypertrophy clinic, you're doing joint clinics with orthodontists. That's the outlook. Completely different. And when you finish your 3 years of training, your qualification becomes registrable as a specialist. The status specialists come in when you've done a specialist training. And if you do further 2 more years of training, which is called fixed term training, which will make you a consultant, a consultant surgeon or a consultant orthodontist. That status you only get after 5 years of training. But again, these training for overseas graduates are tough to get in, and otherwise you can pay a lot of money to be trained, and afford it, fabulous. But when you're doing the training, you'll be exposed to a variety of team, and your networking improves. Because it's not just the knowledge, it's people you know as well, which you're connecting with all the purposes, the team. That will give you more good options and opportunities. And obviously, as I mentioned, it's expensive. You can do MFDS, but it doesn't give you any job. Okay? But MFDS is good. If you have done the MFDS, as my lady has asked me, MFDS is an entry exam. If you want to become a specialist, you have to be, when people are applying, if I see somebody who has an MFDS, they get a preference because this is a person who has taken the effort to become a member of the Royal College. So the exam is structured, the exams are changed. It was MJDF, FDS, MJDF, and FDS, MFDS, and now it's back again in MFDS. These exams are conducted by all the 4 Royal Colleges together, and if you have the MFDS, that's always an added advantage for you to further your experience. The question you ask is, how can you do maxillary surgery? Right. So the difference of maxillofacial surgery in UK and India is all the maxillofacial surgeons, except me, are duly qualified. Okay? They have a slightly older generation. So, so I don't do max surgery anymore. I do it at 12 like jaw surgery. That's what I do. If you have to do hair and neck surgery, you have to do it qualified. So MBBS, you can do shortened version. So for you, the best pathway is pass your exam, try if you can get into it's called DCT now. It's called the dental core training in a hospital, whether it's max. The options are more. Don't try to look for a job in London or anywhere. Go further remote. Get a DCT course, which will be 1 year or 2 years. During that time, get your connections, everything right. Work hard, do audits, practice and publication, and apply to a medical school. You have to do minimum of 3 years of medicine, and then you have to go to the foundation training. Exactly the same, you do as a doctor as well. 2 years of foundation training, then you get to do a surgical training post in maxillary surgery. That's how you get to a max surgeon in the United Kingdom now. It's time consuming and it's a lot of effort, a lot of phone calls, a lot of nights, a lot of work, but if you love it, the surgery you do, maxillary surgery is unbelievably, I'm not putting any other specialties down, because it's art and then science and art, science and surgery together. It's beautiful. Door correction, all these things. Face lace surgeries, beautiful surgeries which you can. But it's a process. You should be prepared because the maxillary MDS, the whole MDS is max doesn't qualify you as a max surgeon in UK. The other option is you can become a normal surgeon with enhanced skills, like you're a dentist with an enhanced skill. Otherwise, the class is called DIPSIs, which is called dentist with special interest. So you're a specialist in surgery, maybe your special interest is orthodontics. They will actually accredit you with your background. Yeah, this person is good, has done MBS from PMS college, she's done this much work, good, excellent. So, and she has experience, or we can take her as a dentist with enhanced skills in oral surgery, not maxillary surgery. Maxillary surgery. Does that answer your question? Yeah. And diplomas, a lot of diplomas are available. As I mentioned, these courses are very expensive. It's expensive for the local graduates. You normally pay at least twice or 3 times more than what the local graduates pay. So it can be course duration maybe 8 to 5 years, and may cost you from anything from 50 to 45,000 or maybe more for these courses. So it's quite expensive. That's money for 3 years or 4 years. The advantage you be paid as well. Okay, so when for you pay the university the tuition fee, but when you're working, you'll get a salary as well. But it doesn't match. You'll always be in debt. There are nearly 24 universities which offer different types of diplomas and degrees, postgraduate degrees in the UK. Some of the courses are part-time. Not many MSCs are full-time. They do 2 or 3 days, and you are allowed to work as a high. I'll come to that later. Just to show you some of the courses. This is the course which Professor Taha was talking to me before this lecture. They were trying to affiliate with the Ulster University. Ulster University is based in Ireland, but they have a unit somewhere in Birmingham, which is Midlands, middle of England, where they run courses in advanced general dental practice. This doesn't give you anything extra, but this is a course which will help you pass your examination. You'll be exposed to your right to ORE-based situation, and you'll be supported really well, you'll be practiced really well. And it costs around 24 to 25,000 pounds a year-long MSc. So that's what we do. There are other courses, if you Google it, you will see hundreds of courses which are available. But don't be drawn to a course which is not useful for you. Okay, that's it, advice actually. When you do these courses, you're allowed to work. Now the beauty is you can work as a dental therapist. The thing is, you show all the evidence again. I'll show you the next time. I'll show you how to use the French therapist. Do you know the difference between therapist and the hygienist? Therapist and hygienist. The hygienists do the scale and polish, deep scaling, that sort of work. The hygienists. Most of these hygienists are dental nurses who has specialists. They have done a couple of years of training to become a hygienist. The therapists do another year of training. They're allowed to do filling on deciduous teeth. They can take teeth out. They can also do fillings on adult teeth. Again, they're under the supervision of a dentist. So hygienists can't do anything on their own. And lots of hygienists nowadays do non-surgical facial aesthetics. They do Botox, the thread lifts, several parts, and I think everybody wants to look at them. So the lip enhancement, all these fillers, hygienists are allowed to do it, and they're allowed to do this sedation as well. So, sorry, not the hygienist, I'm sorry, therapist. With these postgraduate studies, you can bring your spouse. Your spouse may get he or she is a dentist, they can work as a hygienotherapist, or they can even work anywhere where their specialty is, IT field or whatever. And once you finish your postgraduate study, you get 2-year post graduate visa. You be extended another 2 more years if you want to get a job. You can continue with whatever you're doing. And you can work off with your spouse, that's what matters. The visas which are available are nearly 5 types of visa in the United Kingdom. The only 3 advanced plus most. The most one is the tier 2 one. The tier 2 is the skilled laborers or skilled workers visa, which is you're being admitted as a dentist to work in the United Kingdom. You pass your ORE, you pass your performance number, and one of the employers said, look, I want a dentist in Aberystwyth, which is mid-Wales. Nobody wants to go there, that's why they're offering the job for me. So he will send you all the paperwork, which you take to the home office. They give you the tier 2 visa. Normally you become for 2 years, and if you work, and if you be extendable, and if you extend up to 5 years, after 5 years you become a permanent resident of the country, and after 10 years you become a citizen of the country. So you don't necessarily need to do it with the residency itself. You can carry on. That's the tier 2 visa. Tier 4 is mostly for students, like undergraduate students. A lot of I know people with affordable payments, they do dentistry in the UK. So it's quite expensive, as I mentioned, maybe £40,000 for 5 years. And that depends. The tier 5 is again for medical training. And these medical training visas are for us, for dentists, is approved by the Faculty of Dental Surgery, attached to the work for the service. They say, yes, this person wants to do MSc or everything, then we allow him to work, and that sort of visa can be issued. It's a discretion of the Home Office. Home Office can say, no, we don't want to give you a visa. But that's not the case at the moment, because it's a massive shortage of dentists. With the European Union, with Brexit, 7 parts of the UK are struggling to recruit dentists. My advice is, if you wanted to do dentistry or further career in the UK, be sensible and don't be trapped by a lot of agencies or, all the newspapers. You open the newspaper, recruiting doctors, dentists, nurses in the UK, US, Australia. So a lot of agencies do just check their credibility. A lot of things can be done by yourself, don't need to be helped. Everything is okay. It's not the old world. This is the new world, which is everything is transparent and anyone can access anything. This is what else can you do? So this is the question. I have a lot of questions from certain wives and husbands, which means they're married to a British citizen or somebody with a long-term British passport, British visa, and they're qualified dentists from anywhere in India or Pakistan or anywhere. They want to do something, so they can actually register themselves as a hygiene therapist, showing the evidence of their qualification. You look at this website, this is what you do. Dental hygiene is not for registration. A lot of papers. So while you are studying, while you are doing anything, you can actually work as a dental therapist and earn a good living. But most of the employers, they know you are in the process of striving away from that practice. Not going to stay there for long. So one of the practices I work, we have Bangladeshi dentists who, for the last 5 or 6 years, been working as a hygiene therapist. He hasn't passed his exam, so possibly he's not clever enough. And he doesn't speak good English as well, that's the problem. So you have to express and tell yourself. So a lot of people, it's reasonably well paid, but after spending all these years with Professor Vivek and PMS college, you don't want to work as a dental hygienist or therapist forever. So you are, this is the interim thing. That option wasn't with us. I had to look after myself when I was studying for my exams. Parents have to support us. Yeah, you can actually work and support. You can actually make a living out of it as well. You know, pays your bill, pays your accommodation, pays your holidays, and even pays for your university fees or not the university fee, the exam fees. That sort of things can be done. So hygiene and therapy is an option as well. So it's good. What we lack is you worked in this premises, you worked with surgeries downstairs. Probably when you after you qualified, you worked in practices in Toronto, any part of Kerala or India. It's completely different. I won't say it's completely different. It's slightly different in a practice in the United Kingdom. So when you work as a dental hygienist, you know how the system works, how this hand pieces work, how the machines work, how you clean the patient, how you consent the patient. That's very important. Consenting is very important. So that sort of thing comes in your law and ethics part. So you'll be exposed in a clinical environment, which makes your life easy. And if you have a good practice owner, you can say, look, I have to practice something. Can I use it out of hours? Yes, why not? A good member of the staff come and use it. So you can actually use that sort of facilities as well. So yeah, that option is brilliant at the moment. Also, okay, this is the thing, last slide, and we'll leave. Passing ORE or LDS will not qualify you to become a dentist. You need to have a performer number and a valid visa. Without a valid visa, you're not going to work. So visa, because of the recent changes, it's much easier now, I would say. But before you apply, you make sure all those things which is required is there. Don't take a second chance. Because what you're looking at is, are there people trying to manipulate things? That's the thing you should do. The agencies for advertising probably will be having a track. If they have a good track record, go with them. Otherwise, all the information you need to know is available on the internet. So just Google it or that's about it. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. If you want to take my email, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to answer you whether you're in India or in England. When you come to, you're welcome to UK. All I'm saying is, if you're keen to come to the United Kingdom, please come. You will have a better. I won't say better. I shouldn't say better. Some sort of change of atmosphere, but more cooler. Yeah. It's a good place. I like both places. I've done private practice in Toronto as well as in the UK. I learned a lot in the UK because I spent a long time back. On the whole, you will love it. And but this is the Cambridge where I work. This is King's College. This is more than 700 years old. This college. Funding on the back of the river camps. So it's a beautiful place. And summertime, you always love it. In the time we hate it, it's cold, freezing, and snow. So that's about my talk. Any questions, please? So, yeah. What are the on clinical subject talk? Yeah, public health is there. You have somebody else next to you. He's actually trying to digital work for digital knowledge. Digital public health is always some of the people with dental materials, narcosis for dental materials. People just write a process from imaging, basic technologies, like one.
What about being a dental hygienist or dental therapist?
Yeah. The question was, do you need ORE to do an annual test? you are doing as an overseas graduate, do the young test. You don't need an OR examination. So what you do, this OR training program is for 3 years, and you can extend it for the 2 years. During that period of time, you will be registered with the limited registration to the GDC. Okay. So once you finish your training, we take you back to the home. So now I'm going to say, so in the meantime, because of the exposure to the clinical environment, if you wanted to stay back and do further, you must pass your OR as well. So you can finish your end-to-end training and you go home, means go back.